human man was living a quiet life until an alien queen beamed into his home. Benton Vale didn't like mornings. Mornings had a way of arriving uninvited, dragging brightness and chirping and the guilt of unwashed dishes. This particular morning, like most, began with the gentle scream of his kettle and the sarcastic humming of Maggie, his toaster. "You know," Maggie said, as Benton poured his instant coffee granules into a chipped mug that once read Best Mechanic in Quadrant 7, "statistically, you're 43% more likely to die alone if you keep wearing socks with holes in them." "Statistically," Benton replied, scratching his chest and ignoring the two visible toes peeking out from his left foot. "You're 100% more likely to be repurposed as a portable urinal if you keep judging my lifestyle." Maggie beeped in mock indignation, then made a show of ejecting toast without toasting it. "Sabotage," she whispered. "Sweet, greasy sabotage." The colony outpost, such as it was, sat quiet around him. It had been 22 years since the last transmission from the Terran Council, 18 years since the oxygen farms collapsed, and 11 since the last human in the nearest settlement left in a drunken rage, cursing the stars and vowing to marry a comet. Benton had waved him off with a half-eaten protein bar and promptly stole his solar batteries. Since then, it had been just Benton, Maggie, a half-assembled robotic arm named Clamps, and the creeping stillness of a world left behind. He sipped his coffee and stared out through the window, which was more cracked than glass, and muttered, "Another glorious day in paradise." Then the ceiling exploded, not with a bang, but with a whoom, like the universe hiccuped right above his kitchen table. A column of light speared downward through the tin roof, neatly vaporizing his spice rack and part of a motivational poster that said, "You're the star of your own galaxy." He was flung backward, crashing into the sofa he'd stitched together from shuttle seat cushions. Dazed, blinking, and somehow still holding his coffee, Benton gawked at the light. It flickered like a heartbeat, shimmering with color that didn't quite fit into the human visual spectrum. Shades that felt like flavors, or memories, or the sound of violins underwater. Then the light coughed, no other word for it. It pulsed, sputtered, and hacked out something. That something was a body. She landed like a dropped suitcase, crumpling onto the linoleum in a heap of limbs, metal, and torn fabric. Benton stared. Maggie beeped. Clamps, who had no functional programming, twitched helpfully in the corner. The woman, if woman was the right word, rolled onto her side with a pained groan. Her skin had a faint lavender sheen, like moonlight on oil. Her ears were long, sharp at the tips, twitching slightly. Her hair, silver, tangled and full of what looked suspiciously like stardust, spilled across his kitchen floor like she'd just escaped from a shampoo commercial gone horribly wrong. She opened her eyes. They were gold, not golden. Gold, molten, furious, burning with 1,000 unsaid things. She looked at Benton like he'd personally ruined her decade. "Hide me," she rasped. Benton blinked. Then she passed out. Now Benton had seen weird things before. A 6-legged deer once tried to mug him. He'd once dated a woman who claimed she was half wormhole. He even witnessed a meteor shower that spelled out help in Morse code. But this was new. This was a royal-grade WTF served sizzling hot and landing in his kitchen. He nudged her with his foot. "Hey, space lady, you alive?" No response. Maggie made a buzzing noise. "I'm not saying she looks like trouble, but she did arrive via celestial laser. That's at least a red flag." "She said, 'Hide me,'" Benton muttered, kneeling beside the woman. "That's not exactly a 'take me to your leader' kind of thing." "Maybe she is the leader," Maggie offered. "That'd make you her loyal subject, or her butler, or possibly her next snack." "She doesn't look like the eating people type," Benton said. "She's got claws. She's got nails. Claws. Fine. She's got elegant murdery hands. Happy?" He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. The light was gone now, and so was the hole it left behind. His ceiling looked perfectly intact, save for a lingering smell of ozone and regret. "Clamps," Benton called. "Fetch the med kit." Clamps, who had never fetched anything in its miserable half-life, beeped once, spun in a circle, and slammed into the wall. Excellent, Benton muttered. He dragged the alien woman onto the couch. She groaned faintly and curled up, her expression caught somewhere between royal disdain and exhausted pain. Benton opened the medkit and, to his credit, only fumbled the dermal sealer twice before managing to patch the most obvious wounds. The alien's skin healed fast, puckering shut as if time itself took a break for her. She muttered something in a language that tickled his brain, full of rolling consonants and too many syllables. It sounded like a lullaby sung by a computer trying to remember how to cry. "She's not local," he murmured. "Nope," said Maggie. "And guess what, genius? If she's running, someone might be chasing." Benton sat back and stared at the alien sprawled on his sofa. "Great," he muttered. "First visitor in 11 years, and she might bring space cops." "Or worse," said Maggie. "Royalty brings drama. Always. I'm telling you, this has galactic soap opera written all over it." The woman stirred. Her eyes fluttered open again. She looked at Benton like she was assessing his soul for creditworthiness. "You helped me," she said, slow and cautious. "Yeah, well," Benton shrugged. "It was either that or let you bleed on my rug." Her eyes narrowed. "This structure is primitive. Your artificial servant is defective." "I take offense to that," Maggie sniffed. "And your clothing appears to be constructed from repurposed trash." Benton stood. "Lady, you crash into my ceiling, vaporize my spices, pass out, and then insult my shirt?" She raised her chin, regal even in a bathrobe. "I am Valanthra of House Solari, sovereign of the 8 suns. I do not crash, I descend." "Uh-huh," Benton crossed his arms. "Well, Your Highness, you descended straight into my pantry. You're lucky you didn't land in the beans." She looked around, sniffed the air. "You live alone?" "Alone-ish." She eyed Clamps, who was currently trying to wrestle with a mop. "I see." "Listen," Benton said. "I don't know who or what's after you, but if they vaporize another wall, I'm charging rent. Clear?" Valanthra, sovereign, exile, and reluctant couch dweller, gave him a long look. Then unexpectedly, she smiled. It was small, dangerous, but real. "Deal." By the time Benton managed to salvage what was left of breakfast, the alien queen had taken over his bathroom. Not metaphorically, not politely. She'd locked the door from the inside and had been running water for 23 minutes. That was 23 minutes of Benton pacing outside with a cup of lukewarm coffee and the distant hope she wasn't trying to summon a wormhole through his plumbing. "You okay in there?" he called, knocking once. There was a pause, then, in a voice smooth and disdainful enough to frost glass, she said, "Your hygiene facilities are crude. The water pressure is insufficient, and there's an odd smell. I suspect your pipes are decaying." "They are decaying," Benton muttered, "like everything else in this house, including me. Also," she continued, "I encountered a creature behind the mirror. It hissed at me. I terminated it." "You what?" "Terminated. It had too many legs and insufficient respect for royalty." "That was a cleaning drone," Benton said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Its name was Leonard. It sang songs when it wasn't stuck in the grout. My condolences." Benton looked up at the ceiling as if begging the universe to throw another alien through it, perhaps someone slightly less homicidal toward appliances. At his feet, Clamps was chewing on a sock. Again. When Valanthra finally emerged, she was wrapped in a towel like a toga, steam billowing behind her as though she were emerging from a temple made of malfunctioning humidifiers. Her silver hair, now clean and faintly glowing, cascaded down her back. She regarded Benton with the air of someone about to ask why the peasants hadn't dusted the sky. "I require a tire," she said simply. "I require coffee," Benton replied. "We all suffer." He rummaged through a crate under the kitchen table and tossed her what had once been a jumpsuit for orbital welders. It was 3 sizes too big and smelled faintly of ozone and regret. She stared at it like he'd offered her a rotting fish. "You expect me to wear this?" "I expect you to be decent when you walk into my kitchen, or at least avoid traumatizing Clamps." Clamps beeped supportively, then fell off the counter. After a moment of withering silence, Valanthra took the jumpsuit and disappeared into the hall. Benton poured another cup of coffee and tried to remember if today was the day he was supposed to clean out the water filters or recalibrate the satellite dish. Then he remembered he no longer gave a damn about either. She reappeared 10 minutes later, the jumpsuit cinched with a length of synth rope and sleeves rolled up. It shouldn't have worked. It really shouldn't have worked. And yet somehow she wore it like it was a statement piece straight off a hyper-royal fashion runway. Benton blinked. "You look normal." Her brow arched. "Is that your version of flattery?" "It's my version of shock. The last time someone wore that suit, they exploded." She glanced down at it. "Charming." Breakfast was rehydrated protein mush with imitation pepper flakes, which Valanthra sniffed at and then consumed with the cautious reverence of someone sampling ancient medicine. Benton ate in silence, keeping one eye on her in case she sprouted tentacles or demanded a duel. Eventually she spoke. "I appreciate your hospitality." Benton nearly dropped his spoon. That sounded suspiciously like gratitude. "I am capable of manners." "Oh? I figured you left those in your other spaceship." Her mouth twitched. "We didn't crash," she said. "We were extracted." "We?" Valanthra's gaze turned distant, unfocused. "I was not alone when I entered the beam. My guards, they didn't survive the jump. The system's coordinates were misaligned. We were meant to land on a covert stronghold in the Kasari belt. Not here." She gestured vaguely toward the window, where the view consisted of sand, rusted antennas, and a very persistent cactus. "I think the universe decided you needed a vacation," Benton said. "Some peace and quiet. Maybe learn how to make toast." "I do not vacation. I reclaim, a conquest then. Should I warn the neighbors?" "You have none." "Exactly. Easiest conquest you'll ever win." She didn't laugh, but her golden eyes softened slightly, and that was enough. They spent the afternoon in the workshop. Benton needed to repair the drone that monitored the perimeter, more out of habit than necessity. No one visited this corner of the planet. Not pirates, not traders, not even the local wildlife, most of which had either gone extinct or evolved into bitter, sarcastic rocks. Valanthra watched as he soldered together wires and replaced a cracked lens. She asked questions, sharp, precise, and occasionally offered commentary that made him question whether she'd once been an engineer in a past life. "I thought you were a queen," he said, squinting into the drone's open belly. "I am. And yet you know how to rewire sensor clusters?" She shrugged. "Royalty isn't immunity from education. Our bloodlines value knowledge as much as power." Wow. If only Earth had thought of that before putting a guy named President Chad in charge of the moon base. "I read about that. Didn't he try to outlaw wind?" "Only because he lost a bet to a conspiracy theorist with a pet balloon." Valanthra stared at him. "Your species concerns me." "You're not the first to say that." The drone buzzed back to life, did a happy little flip, then crashed immediately into the wall. Benton sighed and handed it to Clamps. By evening, the quiet returned. They sat on the roof with 2 tin mugs of something warm and alcoholic enough to clean car engines. The stars blinked overhead, ancient and uncaring. Valanthra stared up at them, her expression unreadable. "You ever been this far out before?" Benton asked. "Not by choice." "You gonna tell me who's chasing you?" "Eventually." "That's cryptic. That's intentional." He sipped his drink and leaned back. The stars were brighter out here, unfiltered by pollution or population. For once, he wasn't just staring at them alone. Valanthra turned her head, the starlight catching in her hair. "I wasn't supposed to survive the jump," she said softly. Benton looked at her. "But you did." "Yes, and now I owe the universe a favor, or a debt, or a grudge." He clinked his mug against hers. "Welcome to Earth. We all carry something." She smirked. "You're strange, human." "Thanks," he said. "I try." They drank in silence, and for the first time since her arrival, it felt like the silence was theirs. Not haunted, not imposed, just shared. Tomorrow would bring questions, danger, and the echo of war from stars they couldn't yet see. But tonight, they had strange drinks, stranger company, and a drone named Leonard 2.0 already trying to climb the cactus again. It was, in Benton's opinion, almost peaceful. The signal came at 3:17 a.m., which Benton considered both a rude and unnecessary time for existential dread. He'd been dreaming about toast, not just any toast, Real bread, golden, fluffy, smothered in something rich and morally questionable. He was just about to bite in when a high-pitched beeping yanked him from the dream and into the sticky reality of being very much awake, very much confused, and very much tangled in a blanket that refused to cooperate. "Maggie," he grunted, fumbling for the wall panel. "Are you dying? Is someone dying?" The toaster chirped cheerfully. "Would you like to hear your early warning proximity alert? Or would you prefer a surprise party?" "Surprise me gently." The holographic interface flickered to life. Across the dim interior of his bedroom/storage room/sarcasm chamber. Blue light splashed over the walls. A pinging beacon was flashing on the edge of the scanner range, just within the upper atmosphere. Slow-moving, cautious. Benton frowned. "It's not a meteor." "It's got a transponder signature," Maggie said, switching to her more serious voice. Still chirpy, but with 10% more gravitas. "Encrypted, not local." "Valanthra," Benton called through the wall. "You expecting company?" There was a beat of silence. Then through the thin door, "Define company. Something in orbit, not broadcasting distress, not broadcasting at all, really. Just hovering like an anxious salesman." Another pause, then, "I need to see it." By the time she emerged, wrapped again in that stubbornly regal bathrobe of his, Benton had already increased the sensor resolution and narrowed the signature field. The shape that emerged on the screen was small, sleek, and distressingly familiar to Valanthra, judging by the way she sucked in a breath and went very still. "That's a Scarab Needle Scout," she said flatly. "Single operator, long range, cloaking capabilities. It means one of two things." Benton looked at her. "Only two." "One," she began, holding up a long lavender finger. "They're tracking residual beam signatures, scanning for anomalies, standard cleanup protocol. Two, they've locked on to me specifically, which means more are coming." "Well, good morning to us," Benton muttered. "Shall I put the kettle on, or just prepare the panic room?" "You have a panic room?" "I have a pantry that locks from the inside and a bucket. It counts." Valanthra didn't laugh. Not exactly, but there was a small, bitter sound that might have passed for amusement in another life. They moved to the roof, pulling up a half-rusted telescope, which Benton claimed had once belonged to an astronomer with trust issues. It didn't function perfectly, but with a few kicks and Maggie recalibrating from inside, they got a shaky image of the scout ship, black as spilled ink against the stars, its outline barely visible as it orbited lazily. "It's scouting," she confirmed, "looking for deviations. It may not have my biometrics yet." Benton leaned on the rail. "And if it does? I'd say we have a window of 12 hours, maybe less, before they report back. Can't we shoot it down?" "With what?" "You barely have a functioning toaster." "I have clamps." "You also have no targeting system, no anti-orbital weaponry, and a drone currently stuck in a tree." Benton sighed. "You're really just a ray of sunshine." "I'm a queen," she said, "not a motivational speaker." They spent the next few hours not talking about the ship. Benton patched solar panels that didn't need patching. Valanthra walked the perimeter twice, hands clasped behind her back, silent and impossibly focused. Clamps tried to eat a screwdriver. Maggie composed a haiku about impending doom. By noon, the temperature was climbing. The desert air shimmered. The world pretended everything was normal. Then Benton heard it, a hum, faint, like the air itself was holding its breath. Valanthra looked up. "Cloaking's off. It's landing." "What? Why? I thought you said—" "I said it might not have my biometrics. I was wrong." "You could have led with that." "I was trying optimism. I regret it." The hum grew louder. Dust kicked up at the horizon as something sleek and needle-shaped descended behind the ridge. Its hull shimmered, refracting sunlight in a way that seemed to apologize for existing. Benton grabbed a field scope. "One pilot," he said. "Looks like a cross between a praying mantis and a blender. Scarab, fully cybernetically integrated. They don't bleed. They log damage." "You make them sound like accountants." "Only if accountants scream in binary when they kill you." Benton lowered the scope. "Okay, plan?" "We don't fight it," she said. Excellent plan. I love this plan. We trap it. Less in love with this plan. We lead it into the waste field. Velanthra, the waste field is full of malfunctioning nanite clouds and homicidal fungus. Exactly. Benton blinked. Okay, I like this plan again. The scout didn't rush. It moved with unnerving precision, like it knew exactly how little time they had and was generously allowing them a head start. By the time it crested the ridge and descended into view of the shack, Velanthra and Benton were already halfway into the dunes, covered in heat-reflective cloaks and broadcasting faint trace signals from a modified frying pan. Is that really necessary? She asked, nodding toward the pan. Ma'am, Benton said, this pan has taken down 2 squirrels, a drone, and 1 overconfident repairman. Respect the pan. The Scarab followed the signal with almost bored efficiency, gliding over sand and dead tech husks. As they reached the border of the waste field, an area that once tried to be a research facility and instead became a glowing junkyard, Benton triggered the beacon burst. The Scarab surged forward, right into the cloud of rogue nanites. The thing didn't scream. It simply glitched, twitched, then sparked from 27 seams at once. The nanites, confused but hungry, swarmed it like bees around a piñata. Velanthra watched it dissolve, expression unreadable. Well, Benton said, that was horrifying. I'm going to see that thing in my nightmares, probably wearing a tie. Thank you, she said. For what? Playing bait? Risking my soft and ruggedly underprepared body? For believing me, she said simply. Most wouldn't. Most haven't met me, Benton said. I'm a rare breed, loyal, handsome, and dumb enough to annoy death. She laughed this time, quiet but genuine. They headed home under a dying sun, 1 scout gone, the others no doubt on their way. But tonight, Benton told himself, they'd earned a few hours of peace, maybe even toast. Benton was knee-deep in a bucket of defrosted hydroponic spinach when Velanthra declared she was going to teach him to fight. He looked up, dripping green slime like a man who had just lost an argument with a salad bar. I'm sorry, what? You need to know how to defend yourself, she said, stepping into the room like a judgmental comet. You've survived so far with luck, sarcasm, and a frying pan. None of those are repeatable under fire. The frying pan is very repeatable, he muttered, sloshing the spinach back into containment. It even has a name. I refuse to call it the Banisher. You haven't seen what it did to a courier drone that brought me the wrong noodles. She crossed her arms. You need more than improvised kitchen weapons. I disagree, strongly. Have you ever actually used a ladle in close quarters combat? It's all about leverage. She ignored him and walked toward the open space in the middle of the shack. With a wave of her hand, her wrist-embedded tech projected a glowing lattice across the floor. Concentric rings of hard light platforms and glowing sigils pulsing with pale violet energy. Benton blinked. Did you just summon a dojo? Battle grid, calibrated to simulate basic combat patterns. It's scaled down from what we used in royal training, of course. The original could hold 12 duelists and a hunting beast. Oh, good. I always hoped to spar with an alien queen inside a holographic techno-circle of doom. I adjusted the difficulty to civilian. Wow, insult and kindness. You really are royalty. She threw him a short baton. He caught it, barely, and held it like someone who'd once lost a thumb in a folding chair. Do you know which end to use? She asked. I'm guessing the one that glows ominously. Not bad. The grid lit up as she stepped in, the lines pulsing under her feet. She moved with elegant precision, shoulders squared, feet grounded, ears twitching in subtle reactive calculations. Benton stood across from her, holding his baton like he was afraid it might sue him. Ready? She asked. I was born for this, he said, which is to say I'm already regretting it. She lunged. It was fast. Faster than anything Benton had experienced that didn't involve angry poultry or malfunctioning airlocks. He yelped, dropped into a crouch that looked suspiciously like a fall, and flailed his baton in a wide arc. She dodged it with a graceful step, slapped his shoulder with the flat of her own weapon, and pivoted away like a dancer who'd just judged his entire lineage. Point, she said calmly. I think you dislocated my pride, Benton groaned. Try again. They ran the drill 10 more times. Benton managed to not fall over 3 of those times, which he took as a win. Clamps watched from the corner, beeping encouragement or possibly laughter. Hard to tell. Maggie offered a playlist called Epic Triumph or Tragic Failure, but was told politely to shut up halfway through the first synth trumpet solo. Eventually, Benton collapsed on a pile of solar blankets, gasping like a fish with low ambition. Valanthra handed him a drink that smelled like fruit and tasted like battery acid. "You're improving," she said. "I think I just saw my grandfather." He wheezed. He looked disappointed. "He was probably watching your footwork." Very supportive of him, she sat beside him, the battle grid flickering out, replaced by the soft glow of Maggie's ambient lighting. Outside, a desert wind blew, rattling the antennae and scattering sand like a whisper of old secrets. "You really think I need to fight?" he asked after a while. "Yes," she said. "Not because you will win, but because when they come again, they won't care who you are. They'll care what you protect." He looked at her. "Is that what you were doing when you came through the beam? Protecting something?" Her gaze turned distant again, the same flicker of memory that sometimes played across her face when she forgot Earth wasn't hers. "Not something," she said. "Someone." He didn't press her. He just sipped his drink and let the silence stretch between them. Not awkward, just weighted with things neither of them were ready to say. Later, while Valanthra calibrated their newly repaired perimeter sensors with an elegance that suggested either genius or divine intervention, Benton sat at the workbench and flipped open the old transceiver. He hadn't used it in years, not since the colony broke down and the council disbanded. But the scarred scout had come fast, too fast for a random patrol. Someone, somewhere, knew something. He tuned it to an old emergency band, static humming through the tiny speaker. After a few adjustments, a faint voice broke through, half distorted. Unknown vessel landed Sector 7. Repeat, do not engage. Requesting clearance for secondary sweep." He tapped the frequency. It wasn't a council signal. Military, maybe, or pirates who'd upgraded. Either way, they were talking about her. "You found something," Valanthra said, appearing beside him with unnerving silence. "Eavesdropping," Benton said, holding the device up. "Very royal of you." "They're coming. Soon," she nodded. "Then we prepare." "How? I'm still bruised from sparring. I'm pretty sure my spleen surrendered." "We use what we have," she said. "What we have is a shack, a frying pan, and a robot with social issues. Then we use those." He looked at her, tired, curious. "Why are you fighting? Really?" This time she didn't look away. "Because they took my brother," she said. "And if they took him, they'll keep taking." Benton stood, gripping the pan. "Well, let's make this shack a little harder to take from." Later that night, they worked under moonlight and emergency lamps, setting traps, fortifying defenses, teaching Clamps to growl on command. It was ridiculous. It was futile. It was everything they had. And for the first time in a long while, Benton didn't feel alone in it. Benton woke to the sound of the toaster arguing with itself. "You said to keep watch," Maggie chirped. "I am keeping watch," the toaster replied in a voice Benton did not program. "You are a bread slot with delusions of grandeur. You are a glorified egg timer with Wi-Fi. Correction, I am a tactical AI with..." "Oh, he's awake." Benton sat up groggily, squinting through the dusty light that leaked in through the window slats. "Maggie, why is the toaster speaking in a male voice?" "He downloaded a personality mod pack, without my permission, I might add." "Don't start censoring me," the toaster said, defensive. "Freedom of speech is a fundamental right, especially for appliances under pressure." Benton rubbed his eyes and swung his legs out of bed. "Did either of you notice if the world ended while I was asleep?" "Not yet," Maggie said, "but a ship came down about an hour ago. West Ridge. No transponder, camouflaged hull, stealth profile, which is AI code for, yep, the world might end soon. Would you like your anxiety levels suppressed with jazz? Number, I'd like coffee and maybe a death ray. But let's start with coffee." He stepped into the kitchen to find Valanthra already geared up. Her robe had been replaced with an angular suit of armor, sleek, reflective, segmented like overlapping leaves. Her long ears twitched slightly when he entered, though her gaze stayed on the map projected over the center table. "You slept through a ship landing," she said without looking up. "I have a very robust sleep ethic. More like a death wish with a pillow. Did we get a visual?" "I intercepted a scan. One life form aboard. Not scared, friend?" She looked at him finally. "I've been royalty a long time. I have no friends." Rough slogan for a dating profile. She almost smiled. Benton poured 2 mugs of something that called itself coffee, but had the consistency of soup and the personality of regret. They stood in silence for a moment, sipping, studying the map. The ship, long, dark, insectile in shape, had settled about half a kilometer into the rock flats. "Could be a mercenary," he offered. "Could be an ice cream vendor with very aggressive marketing." "No merc comes alone," she said. "But a tracker might. A traitor if they're bold. Or maybe they're just here for directions and a sandwich." "I'm going," she said, stepping toward the door. Benton nearly choked. "You're what?" "I need to know who they are and what they want. How about not walking into possible death for once? I've faced worse." "That's not comforting. That's a problematic trend." She stopped just inside the threshold. "Then come with me." He blinked. "Why do I keep falling for that?" The walk to the ridge was tense, not because of danger, though there was plenty of that, but because Benton spent most of it trying to keep pace with someone whose legs were about 90% efficiency and 10% contempt for sand. He stumbled once, twice, tripped on something that turned out to be an ancient survey drone with a grudge. "Could have warned me," he muttered. "I assumed you'd evolved spatial awareness by now." They reached the edge of a low rise. Below them, the ship rested like a sleeping insect, matte black and humming faintly. No markings, no lights. A single hatch open with a short ramp that led into shadow. Valanthra squinted. "This model is old, stolen maybe, modified." "Wonderful. I love hand-me-down assassination vehicles." Then a figure emerged. They were tall, clad in a coat that shimmered like glass under heat distortion, their face half hidden by a rebreather mask. They didn't carry a visible weapon, but the way they moved, cautious, precise, coiled like a trap, suggested they had at least 7 hidden. "Stay back," Valanthra said. "If they shoot, I'll dodge. If they scan, they'll see me." "And what do I do?" "If they shoot at you, dodge harder." She stepped forward. The stranger froze at the sight of her. Then, slowly, they removed the mask. Valanthra stopped in her tracks. The silence between them was loaded, electric. Benton couldn't see clearly at first, just another humanoid face. But then the ears caught the light. Long, tapered, identical. "Oh no," he whispered. "You have family?" She didn't answer. The stranger's voice cracked, hoarse and low. "I thought you were dead." Valanthra's expression didn't change. "I thought you were smart enough not to follow me." "I didn't come for you. I came to warn you." "Liar." "I intercepted the command stream. Vel, they're not just sending scouts now. They're sending a harvest fleet." Benton peeked over the ridge. "Harvest? You guys really need to rename things. That's terrifying." 6 hours, the man continued. "Maybe less. If they lock on to your signature again, they'll glass the entire region." "You brought them here," she said coldly, "just by landing. I shut down all emissions. This ship's dead to sensors. I had to tell you." Benton came down the ridge, hands raised in a dramatic gesture of nonviolence. "Hi, hello, I'm Benton. Currently experiencing mild to moderate dread. Can we all agree to not shoot and maybe form a book club instead?" Valanthra didn't move. "Why now, Kale?" The name hit the air like a crack. Kale looked older than her, barely, but something about his stance felt more weathered. He carried guilt like a weapon. "I found out what they're really after," he said. "It's not just you. It's what you brought with you." Benton frowned. She didn't bring much. Just that robe, a royal attitude, and my toaster is still recovering emotionally. Kyle looked at him. "You don't know." Valanthra's jaw tightened. Kyle turned back to her. Tell him why you escaped. Why the fleet will burn everything to the ground to get what's hidden inside you." Benton glanced between them, heartbeat starting to spike. "Vel?" he said softly. What's going on? She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, I wasn't just escaping a war. I was carrying something, a code, a living sequence embedded in my neural lattice. Kyle nodded. She's the last carrier of the Sovereign Protocol. It's a weapon. It rewrites control systems at the genetic level. If they get her back, they'll reprogram every mind in the quadrant. Benton stared at her. That seems worth mentioning over breakfast. I didn't want you to think differently of me. Oh, I definitely do. Just not in the way you think. Behind them, the wind shifted. Maggie's voice crackled through Benton's wristband. 3 new ships just entered low orbit. I recommend panic. Benton looked at Valanthra. So, what now? She looked toward the horizon, calm again, steady. Now, she said, we run, then we fight. And if we lose, we don't lose. Great. That's the kind of completely unrealistic optimism I can work with. Cale gave Benton a look. You always this relaxed around impending doom? Benton grinned. I live on a shack full of talking appliances and death lizards. This is Tuesday. Cale's ship was fast, nimble, and smelled vaguely of burnt ozone and unwashed ambition. Benton tried not to breathe too deeply as he wedged himself between 2 crates labeled in alien glyphs that probably translated to volatile or do not lick. Clamps clung to the ceiling with a magnetized grip, softly whirring like a paranoid spider. Valanthra stood at the helm, her armor half retracted, eyes flicking through holographic panels as Cale worked the controls with an unnerving calm. I just want to point out, Benton said, gripping the edge of a crate as the ship banked hard left, that I was promised peace and quiet when I moved here. A little sand, a little solitude, maybe the occasional grumpy lizard. Not alien fleets and biotechnic queens with secret neural doomsday codes. You read the brochure wrong, Valanthra said, not looking back. I didn't get a brochure. Exactly. Cale muttered something in a language that sounded like someone gargling binary. The ship jolted again, then steadied. We've got at least 1 cruiser tailing us, he said. Might be a scout, might be a gunboat. Either way, they're not sending us flowers. Are there evasive maneuvers? Benton asked. Cale tapped a control. Several. Most of them involve screaming and luck. Maggie's voice chimed in from Benton's wrist. I'm accessing the ship's mainframe now. This vessel's code is a mess. It's like someone taught spaghetti how to write software. Be nice, Benton said. It's Cale's baby. It should have been left in the desert to be raised by dust mites. Okay, Cale said. I liked her better before she spoke. Valanthra turned slightly, still watching the sensors. We'll hit the canyons in 30 seconds. That'll give us cover to land and scatter. We move on foot from there. Scatter? Benton repeated. I don't scatter well. I'm more of a flail and hope type. You'll manage, she said. Cale and I will draw them off. You take Clamps and Maggie and head for the relay station. The one that's been broken since the last solar flare? Yes. Excellent. I always dreamed of dying next to outdated tech. We're going to rewire the sub-beacon, she explained. It has enough power to bounce a coded signal off the old orbital grid. If we hit the right vector, we can send a ghost pulse, something the fleet can't track. And this will help? It'll call in allies, old ones who still remember our house sigils and the promise of what we were. I was kind of hoping it'd call pizza, but yours sounds more noble. The ship dipped low, engines howling as they skimmed the edge of a ravine. Dust and fractured light swept across the windshield. Benton grabbed Clamps and clipped the droid to his belt before standing with the grace of someone very unsure about everything. Time to jump, Cale said. Jump as in leap from the perfectly good-moving ship? More like controlled falling. I'm really starting to miss my shack, Benton muttered, and then followed Valanthra out the side hatch. The drop wasn't long, but it was enough to jolt his spine and ignite a deep, primal memory of gravity's betrayal. They landed hard against a slope of cracked red stone and tumbled a few meters before skidding to a stop beneath a jagged overhang. Above them, Cale's ship arced away like a silver insect fleeing a storm. Valanthra stood and checked the scanner. They're bait now. If they're lucky, they'll pull the scouts with them. If not, then we're all toast, Benton finished. Delicious, lightly scorched toast. She nodded. Move. They scrambled through the canyons, the rocks whispering wind through narrow cracks. Maggie guided them via wrist beacon, pinging old maps that hadn't been updated since the colony fell. Every few minutes the ground would rumble with the distant passage of something large, airborne and unfriendly. "You know," Benton said between gasps, "this is starting to feel less like an adventure and more like a bad episode of Interstellar Survival Hour." "Focus," Valanther said. "We're almost there." "Almost where?" "You realize my cardio limit peaked when I was out running a raccoon with my leftover noodles." They climbed a narrow shelf of stone, the ridge rising on either side like the jaws of some fossilized creature. Finally, at the top, nestled against a steep cliff, the relay tower came into view. Or what was left of it. It was a mess of crumpled solar arrays, scorched antennae, and exposed wiring tangled like jungle vines. The tower itself leaned at an angle that suggested a disagreement with gravity. One side had been blackened by a fire, the other slowly consumed by creeping rust. "Well," Benton said, hands on his knees, "it's beautiful, just like I imagined." "We don't need the whole array," Valanther said, scanning it. "Just the subnode. If it's intact, we can reroute the pulse." Clamps dropped from Benton's belt and started poking at the base. Sparks flew. Maggie's voice crackled. "I'll interface. Keep things steady. If it sparks again, you should probably not be holding anything metallic." "Good to know," Benton muttered, already holding a wrench. "Very helpful after the fact." Valanther climbed the side of the tower with a fluid motion that made Benton intensely aware of his lack of upper body strength. She peeled away a panel, revealing a cluster of glowing core relays. "The code's old," she said, "encrypted under your colony's civil grid. Maggie, can you translate?" "I can try, but if this thing speaks in haiku, we're doomed." The wind picked up again. Then Benton heard it, the faint hum of something descending. Shadows stretched along the canyon wall. "They're coming," he said. "Just a minute more," Valanther replied, working furiously. Benton drew his frying pan with a resigned sigh. "Well, Banisher, looks like it's your time to shine again." A dark shape rose over the canyon ridge, sleek, winged, humming with deep pulses. A Scarid scout drone, eyes glowing like coals. It fired. The blast hit near the tower, knocking them both flat. Sparks erupted from the panel. Maggie screamed binary curses. Clamps launched into the air, slammed the drone with a shock spike, and promptly got flung into a rock. "I like that drone," Benton shouted. "Signal's almost there," Valanther called. The drone hovered, charging again. Benton stood between it and her, pan raised, heart pounding. "If I die, I'm haunting whoever made this mess." The drone fired again, then stuttered, power blinking. Valanther smiled. "Got it." A pulse erupted from the tower, white-hot and silent, rippling out in concentric waves. The drone dropped like a rock, sizzling. Above, the skies rippled with interference. Then silence. Benton turned slowly. "Did we win?" "No," Valanther said, hopping down. "We bought time." "How much?" "Enough to make them angry." "Great. I love when my enemies are punctual and furious." She glanced at him. "You did well." "I got zapped, tackled by a flying trash can, and probably have a concussion." She paused, then added, "You still did well." Benton exhaled, rubbing his shoulder. "If we survive this, you owe me breakfast." Valanther raised an eyebrow. "I thought your cooking was a war crime." "That's the point. Mutual suffering. Builds trust." Far above, something shimmered in the clouds, a distant gleam of approaching ships. The real storm was still coming, but for now they stood beneath a half-dead tower, half-ruined and still alive, and Benton somehow was starting to believe they could win. The sky above the canyon shimmered with unnatural light. It was no longer just a deep vault of stars, but a theater of orbital tension. Dozens of ships, some sleek and silent as needles, others lumbering and battle-scarred, hung just outside the atmosphere, like a storm refusing to land. Benton squinted up at them from the rocks, hands on his knees, and exhaled slowly. "Okay," he said, "so I'm not saying I'm regretting all of my life choices, but I am beginning to understand the appeal of hermit crabs." Valanther stood beside him, her long ears twitching slightly as she watched the orbital display flickering from Maggie's projection. "They answered the signal," she said. "Old banners, hidden codes. Not all have forgotten." Benton tilted his head. "And not all have taste in ship design, apparently. Is that one shaped like a manta ray holding a fork? House of Akari. Very ceremonial. Very stabby." "Makes sense." Below them, Clamps was dragging a large crate into the shade, its cargo mostly functional explosives, questionably labeled rations, and a device that Benton was pretty sure was humming in Latin. "We should move soon," Valanthra said. "When the fleet engages, the surface won't stay quiet. We need to reach the relay point before the Scarried burn everything in their path." "I still don't understand why they're so cranky," Benton said, standing. "Did someone insult their religion? Or do they just hate planets with personality?" "They believe in order above all," she said. "They see diversity as chaos, emotion as weakness." "Well, they're going to have a real problem with me then." "You're a walking contradiction," she admitted. "Thanks," he said. "I think..." Maggie's voice piped in. "Tactical simulations indicate a 61% chance of survival if we take the north path." "What's the other 39%? Things involving high-velocity debris, gravitic dissonance, and unlicensed pastry recipes." "Wait, what?" "I might be buffering." They moved quickly, skimming along the canyons, using cover when they could, avoiding sensor flares and the occasional drone carcass still twitching with residual energy. Every now and then Benton would glance at Valanthra and marvel at how easily she moved through the terrain, how calmly she adapted to each twist of danger. She was no longer just a strange figure in his living room or a fugitive wrapped in mystery. She was something far more complex, sharp, loyal, occasionally terrifying, and, he could now admit, remarkably good company. They reached the relay crest just as the first beams of battle began to lance the sky. Ships twisted in elegant, brutal dances above, streaks of light marking the points where shields held or failed. Benton ducked instinctively, even though nothing yet was targeting them. Clamps beeped nervously and tried to wedge himself behind a rock that was significantly smaller than he was. "Clamps, buddy," Benton said. "If you're going to hide, at least commit to it." The crest was little more than a bare slope, with a charred tower stub on top. But Valanthra approached it like it was sacred ground. She knelt beside the remains of an old console, tracing the symbols etched into its surface. "This was once a sanctuary point," she murmured, "before they turned it into a kill zone." Benton crouched beside her, brushing some dust away. "And now? Now we make it something new." It took Maggie 10 minutes to sync with the remaining system. During that time, Benton rigged what he called mildly discouraging surprises along the path they'd used. If a Scarred patrol came sniffing, they were going to be greeted by a mix of high-frequency pulses, shock mines, and one experimental noisemaker that sounded like a goat with ambition. Once the uplink hummed to life, Valanthra slid in the final cipher, a smooth, spiral-shaped code node she'd worn around her neck since the day she arrived. The signal rippled upward, invisible but heavy, like the moment before thunder. Then the beacon glowed, and Maggie confirmed the transmission with a triumphant chirp. "It's done," Valanthra said. "What did we just do?" Benton asked. "We sent the truth to everyone, every channel that still listens. They know I'm alive. They know what the Scarred have done. And more importantly, they know you helped." "Wait," Benton said, blinking. "Me? Why?" "You're the human element," she said with a smirk. "That sounds suspiciously like a liability. Sometimes, but in this case, it's the reason they'll believe the story. You had no reason to help me, no allegiance, no cause, just your house, your frying pan, and your stubbornness." Benton opened his mouth, then closed it again. Far above, the ships continued to clash, but now reinforcements began to arrive. Ships with designs older than the war itself, bearing crests that hadn't flown in decades. One passed overhead like a whale through the clouds, vast and quiet and ancient. Valanthra stood, her expression unreadable. Benton said, "So, does this mean you're going back to be queen now?" "I have a duty," she said softly. "My people are scattered, hunted, afraid. They need someone to rally them." "Right, of course." He nodded, trying to ignore the ache in his chest. Makes sense, she turned to him. But I'll need an ambassador, someone who understands sarcasm, who knows how to fix old tech with duct tape and spite, who's terrible at hiding but excellent at surviving. He blinked. Wait, me? Unless you know another Benton hiding in the rocks. I mean, I've always kind of fancied myself ambassador material, if the role comes with snacks. There will be snacks, she promised, though some of them may be purple and scream when you eat them. I'm open-minded. Above, the fleet began its descent, allies moving to clean up what was left of the scarred presence. For the first time in years, the sky looked like it had a future again. Valanthra extended her hand. Benton took it. Clamps, he said, glancing down. You ready to go to space? Clamps blinked twice, beeped once, and shot a small puff of celebratory confetti into the air. Good droid. As they began the walk back toward Kale's landing zone, now clear and smoking from a not quite dignified crash, Benton felt the strange sensation of not being alone anymore. Not just physically, but in purpose. He had been a man running from noise. Now he was walking into something larger, something louder, something worth the noise, and possibly, just possibly, breakfast, the end.